Welcome to this short video produced by the University of the West of Scotland as a part of the EU-funded PEDAL project. This video is about lesson planning, a task-based language teaching lesson. Within the Scottish context, if you decide to design a lesson in a task-based language teaching approach, you want to keep in mind all of the same things you'd be keeping in mind in order to make sure that the work you're doing fits neatly into the priorities of Curriculum for Excellence. Therefore, you begin by thinking about your students' challenge and their enjoyment of what's going on in the classroom context. You think about the breadth of their learning and their progression through topics and through concepts. Also think about the depth of their understanding and their skill sets, providing opportunities for personalization and for learners to develop their own autonomy and their ability to choose the path of their learning, which is really also emphasized by task-based language teaching approaches as well. Obviously, any lesson should be coherent within the broader context of the curricular area you're teaching, presumably languages teaching, but also if we can align it with what's happening in other curricular areas, that would be desirable. And finally, the lesson should be relevant to the students in terms of what they're doing within the classroom context, but also thinking about where they might be going to next in their lives. When aligning your lesson with the Curriculum for Excellence, I recommend that you begin by thinking about the relevant E's and O's, experiences and outcomes, for those of you who are not Scottish, that you might be targeting in a particular lesson. You'll also obviously have to identify the particular topic that you're going to be engaging with. So one of the examples that you can download directly from the PEDAL blog site is the example of making a pizza. Think about interdisciplinary links, particularly with task-based language teaching. This is a good opportunity to expand from the parameters of languages teaching and think about how language is used in other curricular areas and in other parts of our lives in order to access information, challenge information, develop skill sets, and so on and so forth. Think about the key skills that you'll be targeting in your lesson. So here we're thinking about those 4 competency areas of speaking, understanding, reading, and writing. You do not necessarily have to be targeting all 4 skill sets in one lesson. You'll also want to outline the prior knowledge and learning that is required for the lesson to be a success, and think about how it is that you will assess the student's success within the particular lesson, but equally you might be thinking about how you will evaluate the success of the lesson in terms of achieving its aims, its ambitions. As a short review, in a task-based language teaching approach, many teachers like to structure the learning opportunities into 3 broad categories: a pre-task, in which the teacher introduces the topic and the task; a task cycle, in which the task is accomplished by the students, and then the students plan how they will report what they've done for that task to the rest of their classmates, culminating in them providing that report to their classmates. And then a plenary, in which you focus on the language, you analyze the language that has been used in order to achieve that task and the reporting of the task, and you practice any elements of the language that you feel your students would benefit from reinforcing. Now, this can be achieved in one individual lesson, or it may be something that you achieve over a series of lessons or a lesson sequence. It's really to you and to the needs of your classroom to decide what. I'm now going to present 2 different planning approaches, and you can download a template to help you actually write a lesson plan in either of these 2 approaches. In the first planning approach, what we would do is we'd begin by defining the lesson number, the date, the title of the lesson, And then we think about the learning that is specific to the lesson that you were trying to achieve. So here we might be thinking about E's and O's, but we might even try and break those down into slightly more specific things. And these may be the linguistic outcomes that you as a teacher are hoping your students can achieve over the course of completing their task and reporting on their task. We then discuss and outline the learning activities in terms of what the pupils will be doing and what you will be doing to help facilitate their learning. All the while remembering that in a task-based language teaching approach, your goal as a teacher is to really empower the students to have control over their own learning. So thinking, if you think in an approach of scaffolding, thinking about helping them to take over authority of what's happening. In a very calculated fashion. You'd outline the resources that would be required in order for this lesson to be completed, and then it's generally recommended that you note down any reflections that you have having completed the lessons, so that you know what to do next should you decide to recycle the lesson in future deliveries. The second planning approach that I'll present here, and again, there's a template that you can download and complete if you're interested in trying this approach, is to begin by defining the topic that will be addressed within the particular lesson. Then you would specify the ILOs, or intended learning outcomes, for your lesson. Again, within a Scottish context, these would probably be directly related to the E's and O's for your curricular area. You then describe the product that the students will create, and this is very specific to a task-based language teaching approach. You'd outline the prerequisites that are required for these students to be able to achieve that product, and then in a detailed process, you would outline the process of achieving that learning outcome, or your learning outcomes, pardon me. You might also define the various roles that would be required. So sometimes in a task, for example, we'll have one student acting as a reporter, we'll have one student acting as a leader, we'll have one student acting as a specialist in information retrieval, and so on and so forth. You might outline this as a part of the process. You then outline the consolidation. So as a teacher, how will you bring all of this information together, remembering in a task-based language teaching approach that the plenary tends to focus on the language that's been used. And again, recommending that you as a teacher outline not just how you'll assess your students' ability to have achieved their intended learning outcomes, but also your own evaluation of the lesson and how you might modify it in future years. And that brings me to the end of this short video on lesson planning using a task-based language teaching approach. Again, if you're interested, there are 2 templates that you can download to practice lesson planning in these approaches. And thank you very much for listening.